What's up, YouTube? So I was following this court case, just reading about it, and one of the comments was very interesting to me, and it was about our laws and our system. It kind of opened a perspective up, and so I'm going to share that with you. And it says, the problem with our judicial system is that it went from common law to laws based on precedents. Think about that for a minute. We had our law, and we upheld it, and then we based it off of precedents. And so I'll continue reading. It's real short. Once that happened, we were lost, because once a precedence is established, right, wrong, or indifferent, it is upheld. This is the very reason our judges affect our laws now. Like, they can create laws where they're supposed to just interpret it and uphold it. Anyway, I have a belief I have called the ripple effect. It's when something happens, a decision's made, something's put into motion, and in this case, a law or precedents. A lot of times we don't look long term. So 5 years, 10 years, 100 years down the road, as that little law progresses and matures, or that change progresses and matures, we don't have the foresight to see that outcome. And some people maybe do, some don't. There's a whole bunch of factors there. A verdict is made, and now that's a precedence, right, wrong, or indifferent. That precedence is upheld, and they go, well, how did the last guy rule on it? Okay, bam, very interesting. And so that's my thought for today. It blew my mind. You might be like, yeah, I already do that, but it's not something I've really thought about, but it's a statement I thought was very powerful. We went from common law to precedence-based law. Not much is constitutional based anymore. That's an interesting aspect as well. Anyway, I don't know a lot about this stuff, and we don't even know half the laws. But anytime someone's arrested, they go to their constitutional rights. I know my rights, freedom of speech, I'm being repressed. They all go back to the constitutional rights. I've never heard anybody be like, hey, page 254, section B, verse da-da-da, the county code says. No, people don't know that stuff. We're expected to know it, right? We're expected to have read the book, but we have a general understanding. That's like you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed and you're like, oh, I violated 3 laws already this morning, breathing too much oxygen, something, and that's how I feel sometimes. Like, man, as soon as I get in my car, I'm like, I violated something, or maybe there's some unknown problem with my car, a light's out, anyway, I thought that's very interesting. Common law to laws based off precedents. You see separation of church and state, how that has progressed, and I look at that and I'm like, okay, it was fairly separate, that religious groups aren't governing bodies. That was separation of church and state. But then little by little, it took a step further. They were like, oh, you can't pray at school, separation of church and state. That wasn't an issue for a long time. They're like, oh, you can't do this at school. And they've taken it a step farther, where the Judeo-Christian foundation that our laws are kind of based off of, the 10 Commandments, they've almost taken separation of church and state so far that all religions are equal in the law. And so now you can have outsiders of different whatever groups affect change in our system and our laws. It's interesting to see that ripple effect as it goes. And I mean, there already was a separation of church and state, but now they just keep taking it farther, and then pretty soon you're like, oh, you can't have the Bible in the courtroom, you can't have this and that. And so the whole foundation begins to crumble. Here we are today. You can't have the Pledge of Allegiance at school, whatever it is. I could see how destructive that ripple effect can be over a long period of time. Because separation of church and state was mainly religious governing bodies couldn't run. You couldn't be like, the bishop of the Catholic Church isn't the governor of the state. It had to be separate. The government runs schools, and we used to pray in our schools, and they got rid of that. We used to, some places still do the Pledge of Allegiance. Some don't, from what I understand, or what I read about. And anyway, it's very interesting to see the ripple effect And they keep adding on to the separation of church and state. We'll see where it goes. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can here. But at the same time, government, laws by precedents, and heaven forbid some judge that messes this up. Because, if it's a wrong answer, then the precedents, the decisions will all be wrong. So anyway, food for thought. Law by precedents or common law. Could you imagine running your household this way? Like, each child is different. And could you imagine, like, one child needs to be spanked, another one can deal with a lecture. Another one, if you meet fire with fire, they escalate or crumble, and everybody's slightly different. And because one child is done a certain way, you set that precedence, and then you hold them all to that, or you make one change. Anyway, it's just that's kind of relating it into your own home, governing your home by precedents. It would be crazy. Every child is different, so you have that common law, and one might need a harsher punishment that one time, one might need a lighter punishment. It just depends, and I just see how governing by precedents might not work in the home. A boy and a girl, kids act differently. So anyway, food for thought. That's all I got today. Till next time, signing out.